Imagine a thin veil separating our physical world from realms beyond, where consciousness slips free of the body, exploring planes invisible to the waking eye. For millennia, humans have reported such experiences, journeys that defy understanding, yet persist across cultures. This is the realm of astral projection. Ancient texts and modern accounts describe souls wandering beyond mortal limits, encountering landscapes and beings that challenge our understanding of reality. Are these experiences the product of an imaginative mind in altered states? Or do they reveal a reality science has yet to uncover? From ancient mystics to modern practitioners, testimonies of astral travel form a shadow archive of human experience, offering glimpses into dimensions that lie parallel to our own. These journeys, whether of the mind or true excursions into other realms, invite us to explore the nature of consciousness itself. Join us as we venture into the unknown, where the greatest frontier may not be the stars, but the uncharted territories of the mind. The human yearning to transcend physical boundaries is not a modern phenomenon, but an ancient inheritance, etched into the spiritual traditions of civilizations long turned to dust. Throughout the shadowed corridors of history, across continents and cultures separated by vast oceans and insurmountable mountains, we find a curious convergence, accounts of the soul's ability to wander beyond its fleshly confines. In the scorching deserts of ancient Egypt, where monumental pyramids reached toward the heavens, priests developed perhaps the most sophisticated early understanding of the soul's capacity for astral travel. Their hieroglyphic records speak of the Ba, represented as a human-headed bird, capable of leaving the physical body during sleep or after death. This wandering aspect of the soul was distinct from the Ka, the vital essence or spiritual double that remained connected to the physical form. The Egyptian Book of the Dead contains elaborate instructions for the soul's journey through the afterlife, a journey that begins not at death, but during life itself, through ritual practices. These ancient Egyptians believed that the properly trained initiate could send their Ba forth to commune with the gods, to witness cosmic mysteries, and to return with divine wisdom inaccessible to ordinary consciousness. Far from the stone temples of Egypt, in the verdant depths of the Amazon rainforest, indigenous shamans known as Yaskomo among the Wai people developed their own traditions of soul flight. These journeys served vital functions for their communities, healing the sick, consulting celestial beings for guidance, negotiating with the spirits of animals to ensure successful hunts, or descending into subterranean realms to seek aid from chthonic entities. In the frozen expanses of the Arctic, Inuit Angakuk, those with special capabilities beyond ordinary human perception, similarly reported the ability to travel to mythological realms while their physical bodies remained behind. These spiritual emissaries would return with crucial information for their community's survival, healing knowledge, or solutions to seemingly intractable problems. What connects these disparate traditions, separated by thousands of miles and vastly different environments? What common thread of human experience might explain this convergence of belief in the soul's capacity for extracorporeal wandering? The answer remains elusive, yet the pattern persists with unsettling consistency across the tapestry of human spiritual history. In the ancient Hindu scriptures of India, particularly the Yoga Vashishta Maharamayana of Valmiki, we find detailed accounts of the Linga Sharira, the subtle body capable of separating from its physical counterpart. This tradition developed sophisticated understandings of the energetic anatomy that facilitates such separations, describing channels, nadis, energy centers, chakras, and the vital force, prana, that animates both physical and subtle bodies. The great spiritual teacher Meher Baba described the process with remarkable precision. In the advancing stages leading to the beginning of the path, the aspirant becomes spiritually prepared for being entrusted with free use of the forces of the inner world of the astral bodies. He may then undertake astral journeys in his astral body, leaving the physical body in sleep or wakefulness. In the epic Mahabharata, the warrior Drona is described leaving his physical form to ascertain whether his son still lives, an ancient literary reference to what we now call astral projection. These were not mere metaphors or poetic flourishes, but descriptions of practices considered achievable through rigorous spiritual discipline. In the folklore of Japan, we encounter the concept of the Ikiryo, a spirit that leaves the living body, often due to intense emotions like jealousy, hatred, or love. Unlike the peaceful, intentional practices described in other traditions, the Ikiryo represents a spontaneous and sometimes dangerous form of astral projection, where overwhelming emotion forces consciousness beyond its physical boundaries. The Taoist traditions of ancient China speak of the energy body, or yang soul, that can be consciously directed outside the physical form through specific alchemical practices. The Bao Pu Zi, a text from the 4th century CE, describes techniques for developing this ability. At first, the vital essence is transformed into breath, then the breath is transformed into spirit, then the spirit is transformed again and becomes emptiness. These Taoist adepts believed that through meditation and energy cultivation, one could achieve the state of bilocation, existing simultaneously in the physical body and elsewhere. The goal was not merely to experience extraordinary states, but to achieve spiritual immortality through the creation of a spirit body that could survive physical death. In the Western esoteric traditions, we find references to astral projection in ancient Greek and Roman mystery schools, though details of their practices remain obscured by the secrecy that surrounded initiation. The Hermetic texts speak of the vehicle of the soul, capable of traversing cosmic spheres, while Neoplatonic philosophers like Plotinus described experiences of the soul ascending beyond the body to commune with divine realms. The Hebrew Bible contains intriguing references that some interpret as descriptions of astral travel. Ezekiel's vision begins with the cryptic phrase, "The heavens were opened," followed by extraordinary perceptions of otherworldly beings and environments. The Book of Ecclesiastes makes a curious reference to what some consider the silver cord connecting physical and astral bodies. "Remember him before the silver cord is severed and the golden bowl is broken." In the New Testament, Paul's enigmatic description in 2 Corinthians 12:2 has fascinated scholars for centuries. "I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of the body I do not know. God knows." This ambiguous account, was it physical or non-physical travel, echoes the fundamental question that surrounds all reports of astral projection. Medieval Christian mystics like Hildegard of Bingen and Teresa of Avila described experiences of the soul leaving the body during states of ecstatic prayer. These accounts were carefully framed within Orthodox Christian theology, interpreted as divine gifts rather than techniques to be deliberately cultivated, yet they share phenomenological similarities with astral projection accounts from other traditions. The Renaissance period saw a revival of interest in astral travel through the Hermetic and Neoplatonic traditions. Figures like Paracelsus and later Cornelius Agrippa wrote of the astral body or sidereal body that could be separated from its physical counterpart through specific practices. These Western esoteric traditions conceptualized a multi-layered cosmos with corresponding layers of the human being, each capable of operating in its corresponding realm. By the late 19th century, the Theosophical Society founded by Helena Blavatsky popularized Eastern concepts of the subtle body and astral projection for Western audiences. Blavatsky claimed to have mastered the ability herself and provided detailed maps of the astral plane based on her explorations. The Magical Order of the Golden Dawn, which included members like W.B. Yeats and Aleister Crowley, developed specific techniques for rising on the planes, their term for astral projection. This historical survey reveals a remarkable pattern. Across vastly different cultures and time periods, humans have consistently reported the experience of consciousness separating from the physical body. The interpretations and context vary widely, from shamanic soul flight to religious mysticism, from spontaneous near-death experiences to deliberately cultivated spiritual practices. Yet, the core phenomenology remains strikingly consistent. What are we to make of this historical convergence? Does it point to a universal human capacity, a shared structure of consciousness that manifests similarly across cultures? Or perhaps these accounts reflect actual encounters with a level of reality that exists independently of cultural interpretation? The persistence of these experiences throughout human history presents us with a profound mystery, one that continues to challenge our understanding of consciousness itself. The human brain, 3 pounds of neural tissue containing approximately 86 billion neurons, forming trillions of connections, remains perhaps the most complex structure in the known universe. This remarkable organ generates our experience of being conscious entities in a physical world. But could it also be capable of generating experiences that seem to transcend physical limitations? This is the question that confronts scientific investigations of astral projection. From a conventional neuroscientific perspective, consciousness is understood as an emergent property of brain activity. Every subjective experience, from the taste of chocolate to the feeling of love, corresponds to specific patterns of neural firing. This model, often called the production theory of consciousness, suggests that when the brain ceases to function, consciousness ends. Within this framework, astral projection would necessarily be interpreted as a compelling subjective experience generated entirely within the brain, a kind of waking dream state, rather than an actual separation of consciousness from its physical substrate. The philosopher David Chalmers famously described the hard problem of consciousness, the difficulty of explaining how physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective experience. This explanatory gap leaves room for alternative models, including the possibility that the brain might function more like a receiver or transceiver of consciousness rather than its generator. Under such a model, astral projection experiences might represent a temporary shift in how consciousness interfaces with the physical body rather than a purely internal hallucination. Scientific investigation of astral projection faces significant methodological challenges. The experiences occur subjectively, making them difficult to verify through conventional objective measures. However, several lines of research have attempted to approach the phenomenon from different angles. The most common scientific explanation for astral projection relates it to sleep paralysis and hypnagogic states, transitional states of consciousness occurring at the boundaries between wakefulness and sleep. During normal REM sleep, the brain paralyzes most of the body's muscles to prevent us from acting out our dreams. Sleep paralysis occurs when this mechanism activates while a person remains partially conscious, creating the sensation of being awake but unable to move. This state is often accompanied by vivid hallucinations that can include the sensation of floating or flying, perceiving one's body from an external perspective, encountering presences in the room, and intense emotions ranging from ecstasy to terror. From this perspective, astral projection might represent a particular type of sleep paralysis experience in which the hallucination takes the specific form of consciousness separating from the body. Neurologically, these states involve complex interactions between the brainstem, which regulates sleep-wake transitions, and the temporoparietal junction, a region of the brain involved in creating our sense of embodiment and spatial location. When activity in this junction is disrupted, whether through the natural neurochemistry of sleep transitions or through artificial means like electrical stimulation, it can create the compelling sensation of being located outside one's physical body. In 2002, neurologist Olaf Blanke conducted a groundbreaking experiment in which direct electrical stimulation of a patient's temporoparietal junction reliably induced out-of-body experiences. The patient reported perceiving herself floating near the ceiling and looking down at her physical body. This research suggested that out-of-body experiences, at least in some cases, can be triggered by specific patterns of brain activity. Similar effects have been reported in cases of vestibular disorders affecting the inner ear, which plays a crucial role in our sense of balance and spatial orientation. When these systems malfunction, the brain may generate an external perspective as it attempts to reconcile conflicting sensory information about the body's position in space. These findings provide compelling evidence that the subjective experience of being outside one's body can be generated through specific neurological mechanisms. However, they don't necessarily rule out all interpretations of astral projection. Proponents argue that while the brain might be involved in initiating or facilitating the experience, this doesn't prove that the experience is entirely contained within the brain. An intriguing document known as the Gateway Report emerged from declassified CIA files in 2003. This report, prepared by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne M. McDonnell in 1983, examined the Gateway experience, a sound technology developed by the Monroe Institute to facilitate out-of-body states. While much of the report's theoretical framework would be considered speculative by mainstream science, it represents an unusual example of government interest in the phenomenon. McDonnell's analysis proposed that astral projection might be understood through a model of reality based on holographic principles and quantum physics. He suggested that consciousness might exist in a domain beyond time-space, and that techniques like those developed by the Monroe Institute might allow individuals to shift their awareness between physical and non-physical realms. While such models remain outside conventional scientific paradigms, they illustrate attempts to reconcile subjective experiences of astral projection with emerging scientific understandings of reality. More rigorous scientific investigations have attempted to test whether consciousness during apparent astral states can access information not available to the physical senses. In controlled experiments, researchers have placed targets, usually objects or images, in locations that would only be visible from a vantage point outside the subject's physical body. Subjects attempt to project to these locations and later identify the targets. Results from these experiments have been mixed. Some studies report success rates significantly above chance, while others find no evidence that subjects can reliably access information not available to their physical senses. These inconsistent results highlight the methodological challenges in studying phenomena that cannot be reliably induced on demand and that depend on subjective reports. The relationship between astral projection and lucid dreaming presents another area of scientific interest. Lucid dreams, in which the dreamer becomes aware they are dreaming and can often control the dream environment, share certain phenomenological features with astral projection experiences. Both involve a sense of conscious awareness separated from the physical body, though lucid dreams typically occur in dream environments rather than apparently perceiving the physical world from an external perspective. Neuroscientific research has confirmed that lucid dreaming represents a hybrid state of consciousness, with elements of both REM sleep and wakefulness. The prefrontal cortex, associated with self-awareness and executive function, shows increased activity during lucid dreams compared to ordinary dreams. This suggests the possibility that astral projection might similarly represent a hybrid state of consciousness with its own distinct neurological signature. The use of psychedelic substances like DMT, dimethyltryptamine, sometimes induces experiences remarkably similar to descriptions of astral projection. Research by Dr. Rick Strassman found that volunteers administered DMT frequently reported the sensation of consciousness separating from the body and encountering non-human entities in other realms. The neurochemical mechanisms of these experiences may offer insights into the brain states associated with spontaneous or deliberately induced astral projection. From a scientific perspective, the question remains open. Are astral projection experiences entirely generated within the brain, or might they represent some form of consciousness operating beyond its usual physical limitations? The evidence currently available doesn't provide a definitive answer. What seems clear is that these experiences are neurologically mediated. The brain is involved in their occurrence, but whether they are entirely contained within the brain or might involve aspects of consciousness extending beyond conventional understanding remains a frontier question in the science of consciousness. This scientific uncertainty reflects a broader philosophical question about the relationship between mind and matter, between consciousness and physical reality. As our understanding of quantum physics challenges classical notions of materialism, and as neuroscience continues to grapple with the hard problem of consciousness, the phenomena associated with astral projection may offer a unique window into these fundamental mysteries. The frontier between what is known and what remains to be discovered continues to shift. What seems impossible within one scientific paradigm may become explicable within another. The history of science teaches us that today's paranormal may be tomorrow's normal, not through abandonment of scientific method, but through its expansion to encompass previously unexplored territories of human experience. Consciousness, like water, can exist in different states: solid, liquid, vapor. In ordinary waking consciousness, we experience ourselves as firmly embodied, our awareness seemingly fixed within our physical form. But practitioners of astral projection claim that through specific techniques, consciousness can shift to a more fluid state, capable of extending beyond its usual boundaries. What are these methods, and how might they facilitate such extraordinary experiences? Across traditions and contemporary practices, certain common elements emerge in techniques for inducing astral projection. These typically involve creating specific conditions of body and mind that facilitate the transition from normal waking consciousness to the state conducive to projection. While the frameworks and terminology vary widely, the underlying mechanisms show remarkable consistency. The physical setting plays an important role in most approaches. Practitioners typically recommend a quiet, comfortable environment free from disturbances. The body should be relaxed, but not to the point of falling asleep completely. Many traditions emphasize the importance of lying flat on the back, though some practitioners report success in seated meditation postures as well. The timing of practice also appears significant. Many report greater success during the boundary states between wakefulness and sleep, either while falling asleep or during the hypnopompic state of emerging from sleep. The natural neurochemistry of these transitional states may create conditions more conducive to the experience of consciousness separating from the body. A fundamental aspect of most techniques involves achieving a hypnagogic state, the transitional consciousness between wakefulness and sleep. In this state, the body becomes deeply relaxed, while the mind remains alert and aware. Various methods exist for inducing and maintaining this delicate balance. Progressive relaxation represents one common approach. The practitioner systematically relaxes each part of the body, typically working from the feet upward to the head, while maintaining mental alertness. This creates the paradoxical condition of physical sleep combined with mental wakefulness that many consider the launching point for astral experiences. As the body reaches deep relaxation, many practitioners report experiencing distinctive sensations that often precede separation. These may include vibrations or tingling throughout the body, unusual sounds like buzzing or roaring, and sensations of heaviness or lightness. Rather than resisting these phenomena, experienced practitioners recommend observing them with detached awareness, allowing them to intensify until they culminate in the sensation of separation. Several specific techniques have been developed for initiating the actual separation once the preliminary state has been achieved. The rope method, popularized by author Robert Bruce, involves visualizing a rope hanging above one's body and using one's astral hands to climb it, gradually pulling consciousness away from the physical form. The visualization creates a focal point for attention and a directional movement that facilitates the experience of separation. A variation called the rollout method involves imagining rolling sideways out of one's physical body, like rolling out of bed. Others describe a rising method, in which one simply intends to float upward, allowing the sensation of lightness to increase until separation occurs. Some practitioners report success with the belly button method, which involves focusing awareness on the navel region and imagining an energetic hand reaching out from this area to pull oneself free of the physical body. This approach aligns with Eastern concepts of the navel as an important energy center. The hammock method creates the visualization of lying in a hammock that begins to rock gently from side to side. As the imagined rocking increases, it eventually facilitates a rolling out of the physical body. This technique uses the power of rhythmic movement to shift consciousness from its ordinary state. Sound technologies have also been developed to facilitate astral projection. Binaural beats, slightly different frequencies played in each ear, create an interference pattern in the brain that can help induce specific brainwave states. Theta waves, 4 to 7 Hz, are often targeted, as this frequency range corresponds to deep meditation and the hypnagogic state conducive to astral experiences. Traditional shamanic practices often use rhythmic drumming to alter consciousness. The steady beat, typically in the theta frequency range, helps shift brain activity into patterns associated with visionary states. Combined with intention and visualization, these sound technologies can create neurological conditions that support the experience of consciousness operating beyond the physical body. The wake back to bed method takes advantage of natural sleep cycles. The practitioner sets an alarm to wake after approximately 5 to 6 hours of sleep, remains awake for a short period, typically 15 to 60 minutes, and then returns to bed with the specific intention of projecting. This timing targets the REM-rich later sleep cycles when the mind is naturally more active while the body remains in sleep paralysis. Various substances have been used across cultures to facilitate astral experiences. The blue lotus flower, Nymphea caerulea, was used in ancient Egypt and contains compounds with mild psychoactive effects. Mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris, has been used in European folk traditions to enhance dreaming and is still employed by some contemporary practitioners to facilitate astral projection. More potent ethnobotanicals like those containing DMT have been used in shamanic traditions to induce powerful out-of-body states, though these create experiences that may differ qualitatively from the controlled projection described in other traditions. Historical flying ointments in European traditions often contained tropane alkaloids from plants like henbane and belladonna, creating dissociative states interpreted as spiritual flight. Beyond specific techniques, certain psychological factors appear crucial to successful practice. Relaxed determination represents a paradoxical state that many experienced practitioners describe as essential. Too much effort creates tension that inhibits the experience, while insufficient intention allows consciousness to drift into ordinary sleep. Finding the balance between active intention and passive allowing seems to be a key factor. Fear often presents a significant obstacle. The sensation of consciousness beginning to separate from the body can trigger primal survival fears, causing many beginners to abort the experience by tensing up or opening their eyes. Experienced practitioners emphasize the importance of preparing mentally for these sensations and maintaining calm awareness throughout the process. Physical discomfort can similarly interrupt the delicate state required for projection. Practitioners recommend addressing basic needs like hunger or thirst before beginning, finding a comfortable temperature, and ensuring the body is positioned to minimize discomfort during extended periods of stillness. The role of belief remains an intriguing question in astral projection practice. Some traditions emphasize that belief in the possibility of the experience is essential for success. Others suggest that skepticism doesn't necessarily prevent the experience, but may influence how it is interpreted. The relationship between expectation, belief, and the actual experience represents a complex aspect of the phenomenon that bridges psychological and potentially metaphysical dimensions. Meditation practices that develop concentration and body awareness often serve as important preparation for astral projection. The ability to maintain focused attention without distraction, to observe subtle bodily sensations, and to remain aware during transitional states of consciousness creates the foundation for successful practice. Energy work practices from various traditions, including Qigong, pranayama, and Western magical techniques, are frequently incorporated into preparation for astral projection. These practices aim to increase sensitivity to and control of subtle energies, which may facilitate the separation of the energetic or astral body from its physical counterpart. The concept of the mind awake, body asleep state appears consistently across different approaches. This phrase, popularized by Robert Monroe, describes the specific state of consciousness that serves as the gateway to astral experiences, maintaining lucid awareness while the body enters the physiological state of sleep. Various techniques ultimately serve this common purpose of dissociating mental alertness from physical wakefulness. Mindfulness of the hypnagogic state, paying close attention to the sensations and imagery that arise at the edge of sleep, represents another approach. Rather than applying specific techniques, the practitioner simply maintains gentle awareness of the natural transition into sleep, watching for the opportunity to retain consciousness as the body falls asleep. The diversity of techniques across traditions and contemporary practice suggests that multiple pathways may lead to similar experiences. What works effectively for one person may not work for another, and many experienced practitioners report developing personalized approaches that combine elements from different methods. Despite this diversity, the underlying pattern remains consistent, creating conditions in which consciousness can maintain awareness while detaching from its usual identification with the physical body. Whether understood through the neurological mechanisms of sleep transitions, the energetic models of Eastern traditions, or the spiritual frameworks of various religions, these techniques aim to facilitate an experience that has fascinated humanity throughout recorded history: the journey of consciousness beyond its physical boundaries. What do travelers encounter when consciousness ventures beyond its physical boundaries? Reports from those who claim direct experience of the astral plane describe a complex, multi-layered reality with its own geography, physics, and inhabitants. While these accounts necessarily filter through the lens of individual interpretation and cultural context, certain consistent patterns emerge that suggest either a shared psychological structure underlying these experiences or encounters with realms that exist independently of the perceivers. Many traditions describe the astral plane not as a single homogeneous realm, but as a spectrum of vibrational frequencies or dimensional layers. The Theosophical tradition, drawing from Eastern concepts, outlines 7 distinct levels of the astral plane, each corresponding to different states of consciousness and types of experience. Lower astral planes are described as denser, bearing closer resemblance to physical reality, but with subtle distortions, while higher planes become increasingly luminous, abstract, and removed from physical reference points. The lower astral regions are often described as containing thought forms, semi-autonomous creations generated by human consciousness, both individual and collective. These may manifest as environments resembling physical locations, but with dreamlike qualities, or as entities that behave as independent beings despite being formed from psychic energy. Some traditions warn that these lower regions can contain confusing or misleading experiences precisely because they reflect back the projections of human consciousness rather than representing more fundamental aspects of reality. Higher astral planes, according to experienced travelers, contain increasingly rarefied environments where consciousness encounters more abstract principles and archetypal patterns. Colors may appear more vivid than their physical counterparts, or may include hues that have no equivalent in ordinary perception. Geometrical forms often feature prominently, with some practitioners reporting encounters with complex mathematical structures that seem to represent fundamental patterns underlying reality itself. One of the most consistently reported features of the astral plane involves differences in how time and space operate compared to physical reality. Distance in the astral realm appears subjective rather than objective. Locations are reached through intention rather than movement through space. Thinking of a person or place can result in immediate transition to their vicinity, making travel instantaneous for the focused consciousness. Similarly, conceptual places may exist that have no physical counterpart, realms corresponding to particular emotional states, thought patterns, or spiritual qualities. These environments are organized by affinity rather than spatial proximity, creating a landscape that responds to consciousness in ways fundamentally different from physical geography. Time in the astral plane reportedly flows differently than in physical reality. Many practitioners report that extended experiences in the astral realm may correspond to only minutes of physical time. This time dilation effect means that consciousness may experience hours of exploration, while the physical body experiences only a brief period of altered state. Some travelers to higher astral realms describe encountering an eternal present, where past, present, and future exist simultaneously rather than sequentially. The silver cord represents one of the most persistent motifs in astral projection literature across cultures. Described as a luminous, elastic connection between the physical and astral bodies, this cord supposedly ensures that consciousness can find its way back to its physical vehicle and maintains the life-sustaining connection between the two. Some traditions claim that this cord is virtually unbreakable during life and severs only at physical death, providing a safeguard for astral travelers. Ancient Egyptian texts refer to a similar concept in their description of the Bay Soul's connection to the physical body. While the Bible contains what some interpret as a reference to this phenomenon in Ecclesiastes 12:6, remember him, before the silver cord is severed and the golden bowl is broken. Many practitioners report that this cord functions automatically, retracting consciousness back to the physical body when necessary. If the physical body is disturbed, threatened, or requires attention, the silver cord rapidly pulls the astral form back to physical awareness. This automatic safety mechanism supposedly prevents the dangers of prolonged separation that might otherwise occur. What purposes might the astral plane serve beyond mere exploration? Various traditions suggest that different regions fulfill specific functions. Some describe vast libraries or repositories of knowledge accessible in astral states. Records of past events, possible futures, or information about the nature of reality itself. The Akashic Records, a concept found in Theosophical and some Eastern traditions, represents perhaps the most famous example of such a repository, described as a non-physical plane containing the history of every soul and all events past, present, and future. Healing centers reportedly exist in certain astral regions where both the living, during projection, and the deceased may receive energetic restoration and spiritual guidance. These centers are often described as staffed by beings specialized in various forms of healing and transition assistance. Natural environments of impossible beauty and complexity feature in many accounts. Forests where plants exhibit consciousness, oceans of unfathomable depth, mountain ranges that would be physically impossible on Earth. These environments may serve as meeting places, training grounds, or simply as expressions of creative principles operating beyond physical limitations. The relationship between physical locations and their astral counterparts represents another intriguing aspect of reported experiences. Some practitioners claim that when projecting to actual physical locations, they can perceive both the material objects and an energetic overlay not visible to ordinary perception. This might include seeing auras around living beings, energy currents flowing through the earth, or geometric patterns underlying physical structures. Certain physical locations reportedly serve as gateways or thin places where the boundary between physical and astral realms becomes more permeable. Sacred sites around the world, from Stonehenge to the Great Pyramid, from Mount Kailash to Uluru, are described by some traditions as places where the veils between worlds naturally thin, making projection easier and allowing energies to flow more readily between dimensions. The creative potential of consciousness in the astral plane features prominently in many accounts. Unlike physical reality, where changing the environment requires physical action over time, the astral realm reportedly responds directly to thought and intention. Experienced travelers describe the ability to shape environments through concentrated visualization, though the stability and detail of these creations may depend on the practitioner's skill and the particular level of the astral plane being experienced. This creative aspect raises fascinating questions about the nature of the astral plane itself. Are practitioners encountering a pre-existing reality with its own independent existence? Or are they experiencing a realm that is fundamentally shaped by consciousness, either individual or collective? Different traditions offer varying perspectives on this question, with some suggesting that both elements may be present, objective realms that nonetheless respond more fluidly to consciousness than physical matter does. The concept of thought forms, creations generated and maintained by consciousness, plays an important role in many descriptions of the astral landscape. These may range from simple objects manifested by individual practitioners to complex environments or entities sustained by the collective belief and attention of many minds over time. Religious thought forms, for instance, might include angelic or divine beings shaped by centuries of devotion and visualization by millions of believers. This perspective suggests that some astral entities may be simultaneously autonomous and dependent, operating as independent beings while ultimately drawing their substance and form from human consciousness. The line between creation and discovery becomes blurred in such a realm, raising profound questions about the nature of reality itself and the role of consciousness in shaping it. The intersubjective nature of the astral plane presents another fascinating aspect of reported experiences. Multiple practitioners claim to be able to meet in shared astral spaces, perceiving the same environments and being able to communicate with each other. Some organized groups practice mutual projection, attempting to rendezvous at predetermined astral locations and later comparing notes about their experiences. If these accounts represent more than coincidence or suggestion, they raise intriguing possibilities about the nature of consciousness and reality. Is the astral plane a collective unconscious made visible, as some Jungian interpretations might suggest? Or does it represent an objective realm that exists independently but can be accessed by multiple consciousnesses under the right conditions? The consistency of certain features across different practitioners' accounts suggests either a shared psychological structure underlying these experiences or encounters with realms that maintain some degree of objective existence independent of individual perception. The astral landscape, with its complex geography and physics, represents either an elaborate construction of the human psyche or a genuine frontier of exploration beyond the physical, or perhaps most intriguingly, something that transcends this very dichotomy. Perhaps the most compelling and controversial aspect of astral projection involves reports of encountering conscious entities during these experiences. From guides and deceased loved ones to non-human intelligences and shadowy presences, these encounters raise profound questions about the nature of consciousness and reality. Are these entities autonomous beings existing independently of the traveler, projections of the subconscious mind, or something that transcends this dichotomy entirely? Practitioners and traditions have developed various taxonomies of astral entities, typically categorized by their apparent nature, origin, and the vibrational frequency or plane where they're most commonly encountered. While these classification systems vary across traditions, certain types of entities appear consistently in accounts across cultures and time periods. Guide entities represent one of the most frequently reported encounters. These beings often appear in forms calculated to be recognizable and reassuring to the human traveler, frequently as wise elders, luminous human-like figures, or culturally appropriate spiritual archetypes. They may offer assistance in navigating the astral environment, protection from lower entities, or teachings about the nature of non-physical reality. Communication with these guides typically occurs through direct mind-to-mind transmission rather than verbal language. Practitioners describe receiving complete concepts or packages of information instantaneously, often accompanied by a sense of profound understanding that may diminish somewhat upon return to physical consciousness. This mode of communication transcends linguistic barriers and allows for the transmission of complex ideas that might be difficult to express in words. Encounters with deceased loved ones represent another common experience reported during astral projection. These meetings may occur spontaneously or through deliberate intention to connect with someone who has passed. The deceased individual often appears younger or healthier than in their final days of physical life, yet maintains recognizable features and personality characteristics that convince the experiencer of their identity. Some of these encounters include evidential communication, information provided by the deceased that was previously unknown to the experiencer, but later verified in physical reality. Such cases are particularly intriguing from an evidential perspective, as they suggest either access to information beyond what should be available to the projector's conscious mind, or genuine contact with a surviving consciousness. Ascended masters or advanced spiritual beings feature in many accounts, particularly from practitioners within specific spiritual traditions. These entities are described as having extraordinary luminosity and emanating unconditional love or compassion. Unlike more transient astral entities, these beings reportedly maintain consistent appearance and qualities across different encounters and different perceivers, suggesting either an objective existence or a remarkably stable collective thought form. Religious figures appropriate to the practitioner's cultural background are commonly encountered, raising interesting questions about the relationship between expectation and experience in the astral realm. A Buddhist practitioner might encounter bodhisattvas, a Christian might meet angels or saints, a Hindu might experience devas or gods from that tradition. Are these encounters shaped entirely by the practitioner's beliefs? Or might universal spiritual principles manifest in culturally appropriate forms to facilitate understanding? Lower vibrational entities, often encountered in regions closest to the physical plane, represent a more troubling category of reported experiences. These are frequently described as shadowy, amorphous, or vaguely humanoid figures that emanate fear, hostility, or predatory intent. Various traditions interpret these entities differently, as deceased humans trapped in lower states of consciousness, as elemental beings lacking higher spiritual development, or as thought forms generated by negative human emotions. Many experienced practitioners emphasize that the influence of such entities depends largely on the traveler's own emotional state and level of spiritual development. Fear attracts fearful experiences, while a calm, centered consciousness remains largely immune to lower entity influence. This principle suggests that encounters in the astral realm may function partly as mirrors reflecting the practitioner's own consciousness back to them. Elemental beings associated with natural forces represent another category of reported encounters. These entities may appear as hybrids, combining features from different species, or as entirely non-humanoid forms appropriate to their element. They are often described as guardians of specific natural locations in the astral realm, with limited but specialized intelligence focused on their particular domain. Thought forms, generated by human consciousness, both individual and collective, populate certain regions of the astral plane, according to many traditions. These semi-autonomous creations range from relatively simple manifestations of individual thought and emotion to complex entities sustained by centuries of collective belief and attention. Religious thought forms, angels, deities, or other spiritual figures, may represent the most sophisticated examples of this phenomenon, entities that have been shaped and energized by the focused attention of millions of minds over extended periods. Cultural archetypes as described in Jungian psychology, the hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the great mother, reportedly appear as seemingly independent entities in certain astral regions. These may represent patterns in the collective unconscious taking form in the more fluid medium of the astral plane, where psychic structures can manifest as apparently objective encounters. Non-human intelligences with consciousness evolved along different paths than human awareness feature in some of the more extraordinary accounts of astral travel. These beings may exhibit forms with impossible geometry that human perception struggles to process, or may appear as light patterns, energy configurations, or other non-anthropomorphic manifestations. Communication with such entities often occurs through concept clusters rather than linear language, creating profound, but sometimes difficult to translate understanding. The interpretation of these varied encounters remains perhaps the most challenging aspect of the astral projection phenomenon. The externalist perspective holds that travelers are encountering objectively real beings existing independently of human consciousness. The internalist view suggests that all such entities represent projections of the individual or collective human psyche. A third perspective transcends this dichotomy, proposing that at the level of consciousness where astral experiences occur, the distinction between internal and external may itself be an illusion, a product of our physically based dualistic thinking, rather than an accurate representation of the nature of consciousness and reality. What evidence might support these different interpretations? Cases where multiple practitioners report encountering the same entities with consistent characteristics suggest either an objective component to these experiences or remarkably consistent structures in the human unconscious. Evidential communications providing verifiable information unknown to the practitioner challenge purely psychological explanations, though skeptics might propose alternative mechanisms like subconscious knowledge or coincidence. The phenomenology of these encounters often includes a quality of otherness that experiencers find compelling, the sense of interacting with a consciousness that operates according to its own agenda, rather than as an extension of the practitioner's mind. This subjective quality, while not constituting objective evidence, represents an important aspect of how these experiences are understood by those who have them. Specific accounts of entity encounters illustrate the range and impact of these experiences. A physician with no previous interest in spiritual matters reports an unexpected projection during which he encounters his deceased grandfather, noting specific details of clothing and appearance exactly as remembered. A Buddhist practitioner describes meeting a being of overwhelming luminosity that communicates through direct impression rather than words, conveying teachings consistent with but extending beyond traditional doctrine. A college student experiencing sleep paralysis reports being confronted by a shadowy entity that seems to feed on terror, only to discover that when fear subsides, the entity's appearance transforms from threatening to neutral. An indigenous shaman consults with nature spirits about healing plants and is guided to specific botanical remedies that prove effective for treating community illnesses. Different spiritual traditions offer varying frameworks for understanding these encounters. Shamanic traditions typically view entities as objectively real beings, inhabiting non-ordinary reality, with whom humans can form relationships of mutual exchange and obligation. The practitioner may develop ongoing connections with power animals or spirit helpers who provide assistance in exchange for attention and energy. Abrahamic religions often approach such experiences with caution, interpreting entities through the lens of their theological frameworks, as angels, demons, or other beings recognized within their cosmology. These traditions typically emphasize discernment, as they consider some entities to be potentially deceptive or harmful to spiritual development if approached without proper protection and guidance. Buddhist cosmology acknowledges various classes of non-physical beings, but considers them subject to the same laws of impermanence and dependent origination as all phenomena. From this perspective, attachment to or excessive focus on entity encounters may actually hinder spiritual progress by reinforcing the illusion of inherently existing separate selves. Contemporary interpretations sometimes merge traditional understandings with modern concepts. The extraterrestrial contact narrative often blends with interdimensional physics, suggesting that some entities may represent advanced beings from other dimensions or timelines, rather than purely spiritual entities in the traditional sense. Others propose that certain encounters might represent contact with future versions of human consciousness reaching back to guide its own evolution. The philosophical implications of these encounters extend beyond questions of their objective reality. If consciousness can operate beyond the physical brain and encounter other consciousnesses in non-physical states, what does this suggest about the fundamental nature of awareness itself? Is consciousness primarily an individual phenomenon, or might individual awareness represent localized expressions of a more unified field? The externalist versus internalist debate about entity nature ultimately leads to deeper questions about the relationship between mind and reality. If these entities exist only in the mind of the perceiver, this raises the question of what other aspects of our seemingly objective reality might similarly be constructions of consciousness. Conversely, if they exist independently, this challenges fundamental materialist assumptions about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to physical reality. Perhaps most intriguingly, some traditions suggest that at the deepest levels of reality, the distinction between self and other exists as a relative rather than absolute condition. From this perspective, entity encounters in the astral plane might represent interactions within a unified field of consciousness where boundaries between beings exist as functional rather than fundamental separations, a perspective that transcends both the externalist and internalist positions while incorporating elements of each. In our quest to explore the furthest reaches of consciousness, we must acknowledge the shadows that lurk at the edges of these extraordinary experiences. Like all frontiers, the astral plane presents not only wonders but potential hazards, pitfalls for the unwary traveler who ventures beyond the familiar territory of ordinary awareness without proper preparation or understanding. The most immediate dangers of astral projection lie not in the experience itself, but in its psychological aftermath, the integration of experiences that may fundamentally challenge one's understanding of reality. When consciousness glimpses realms that contradict our conventional worldview, the resulting cognitive dissonance can be profound and disorienting. Some practitioners report periods of existential uncertainty following powerful astral experiences, questioning the nature of reality and their place within it. The boundaries between waking life and astral experience may temporarily blur, creating confusion about which experiences occurred in physical reality and which in non-ordinary states of consciousness. For individuals with pre-existing psychological vulnerabilities, these challenges can be magnified. Those with dissociative tendencies may find the experience of separation from the physical body reinforces unhealthy patterns of disconnection. Those prone to magical thinking may develop grandiose interpretations of their experiences, leading to further detachment from consensus reality. There exists, in the depths of human awareness, a delicate equilibrium between the known and the unknown, between the light of reason and the vast darkness of mystery that surrounds our small island of understanding. To venture too far, too quickly into those uncharted waters, risks disturbing this equilibrium, allowing the strange tides of non-ordinary perception to wash away the foundations of sanity itself. Yet we must ask, Is this danger inherent in the experience itself, or in our culture's inability to provide frameworks for integrating such experiences? Indigenous traditions that include astral projection as part of their spiritual practices typically embed these experiences within comprehensive cosmological systems and community support structures. It is perhaps our modern isolation, our fragmentation from traditional wisdom, that renders these experiences potentially destabilizing rather than integrative. Beyond psychological risks lie what practitioners describe as energetic or spiritual dangers, potential harms to aspects of the self not recognized by conventional Western medicine, but acknowledged in many traditional systems of healing and spirituality. The most commonly reported energetic risk involves what various traditions call attachment, possession, or energetic intrusion. The possibility that entities encountered in the astral plane might establish unwanted connections to the traveler's energy field. These attachments may manifest as persistent negative emotions, intrusive thoughts, unusual compulsions, or energy depletion following astral experiences. Another reported risk involves damage to or weakening of the energetic structures that maintain the connection between physical and subtle bodies. Some traditions warn that premature or forced projection without proper preparation may strain this connection, potentially leading to difficulties in maintaining proper embodiment or grounding in physical reality. Those who have ventured too frequently beyond the veil sometimes develop a peculiar quality, a certain distance in their gaze, as though they perceive layers of reality invisible to ordinary sight. They move through the physical world like visitors from elsewhere, never fully present, their consciousness partially extended into realms beyond ordinary perception. Whether this represents an evolution of awareness or a dangerous fragmentation remains a question without simple answer. Across traditions that work with astral projection, we find consistent emphasis on protection practices, methods for maintaining energetic integrity and ensuring safe passage through non-ordinary realms. These practices reflect an understanding that consciousness, when operating beyond its physical boundaries, becomes more permeable, more susceptible to influence from the environments it encounters. The most fundamental protection lies in the cultivation of clear intention and emotional stability. Fear, in particular, appears to attract or generate negative experiences, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that can lead to increasingly frightening encounters. Experienced practitioners emphasize the importance of developing meditation skills that allow one to maintain equanimity, even in the face of challenging or threatening appearances. Various traditions offer specific protection techniques, from visualization of protective light or energetic shields, to invocation of spiritual guides, guardian figures, or divine protection. While the forms vary according to cultural and religious context, the underlying principle remains consistent: the focused intention to maintain energetic boundaries and integrity during the vulnerable state of projection. Physical preparations also play a role in safe practice. Creating a protected physical space, free from disturbance, cleansing the environment through practices like smudging with sage or other purifying substances, and attending to bodily needs such as proper rest and nutrition all contribute to safer astral experiences. Perhaps the subtlest danger in astral projection lies not in any external threat, but in the practitioner's relationship to the experiences themselves. The extraordinary nature of these experiences can create a kind of spiritual addiction, a growing preoccupation with astral realms at the expense of physical life and relationships. Some practitioners become increasingly detached from ordinary reality, viewing physical existence as merely a pale shadow of the more vivid and seemingly significant experiences available in the astral plane. This devaluation of embodied life can lead to neglect of physical needs, withdrawal from relationships, and diminished engagement with the practical responsibilities of existence. Others develop unhealthy attachment to specific astral experiences or entities, repeatedly seeking particular states or encounters, rather than allowing the practice to unfold naturally as a tool for broader spiritual development. This fixation can create stagnation in the practitioner's growth, as they become consumers of spiritual experience rather than integrating the wisdom these experiences might offer. The allure of these otherworldly realms can exert a terrible fascination upon the human mind, drawing it ever deeper into labyrinths of experience that, while seemingly profound, may lead only to greater separation from the very reality we sought to understand more deeply. Like moths drawn to brilliant but consuming flame, some travelers find themselves unable to resist the call of these extraordinary states, even as their connection to ordinary life grows increasingly tenuous. Throughout history, different cultural and religious traditions have issued warnings about practices resembling astral projection, though these cautions vary significantly in their specifics and underlying assumptions. Many indigenous traditions emphasize the importance of proper training and guidance, warning that unprepared individuals may become lost in non-ordinary realms or encounter entities they lack the skills to engage with safely. These traditions typically view astral travel itself as neutral, neither inherently good nor evil, but requiring proper context, preparation, and purpose. Within the Abrahamic religions, particularly in their more orthodox expressions, warnings about astral projection often reflect broader concerns about practices that appear to challenge divine authority or established religious hierarchies. These traditions may interpret astral experiences as potentially demonic deceptions rather than genuine spiritual insights, particularly when they occur outside sanctioned religious frameworks. Eastern traditions like Buddhism acknowledge the reality of astral experiences, but often caution against attachment to them, viewing them as potential distractions from the more fundamental work of spiritual liberation. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, for instance, offers detailed guidance for navigating post-death states that closely resemble descriptions of the astral plane, while emphasizing that attachment to any particular state or experience creates obstacles to ultimate realization. Amidst these various warnings, how do we distinguish between prudent caution and fear-based mythology? How do we navigate between naive enthusiasm that ignores potential risks and paralyzing fear that prevents exploration altogether? Critical discernment requires examining the source and context of warnings, considering whether they emerge from direct experience, traditional wisdom, or cultural biases and control mechanisms. It involves testing claims against both personal experience and the collective testimony of practitioners across different traditions and time periods. Some commonly repeated warnings appear to have little basis in practitioners' actual experiences. The fear that one might not be able to return to the physical body, for instance, contradicts the consistent report that the challenge lies not in returning, but in maintaining the projection, that the natural tendency of consciousness is to reintegrate with its physical vehicle rather than to remain separated from it. Other warnings, particularly those concerning psychological integration and the potential for unhealthy attachment, find consistent support across traditions and individual accounts, suggesting they reflect genuine challenges inherent in the practice rather than merely cultural taboos. Beyond questions of personal safety lie broader ethical considerations about the responsible use of astral projection. If these experiences do indeed grant access to realms beyond ordinary perception, what ethical principles should guide our interactions with the beings and environments we encounter there? Many traditions emphasize respect and reciprocity, approaching astral realms not as conquests to be claimed or resources to be exploited, but as territories with their own integrity and inhabitants with their own sovereignty. This perspective suggests that astral travelers bear responsibility for the impact of their presence and intentions in these subtle dimensions, just as they would in physical environments. Questions of consent become particularly complex in astral practice. If consciousness can indeed travel to locations occupied by other beings, what are the boundaries of appropriate observation or interaction? Some traditions address this through explicit protocols for announcing one's presence and purpose when entering astral territories associated with specific entities or traditions. The use of information gained through astral perception raises additional ethical questions. Claims of accessing hidden knowledge, future events, or private information about others through astral means must be approached with both ethical discernment and epistemological humility, recognizing the potential for both harm and error in such applications. Perhaps the most consistent recommendation across traditions involves the importance of grounding and integration, practices that help maintain balance between astral experiences and embodied life. These practices serve not only protective functions, but ensure that insights gained through astral exploration actually enrich rather than diminish one's engagement with physical existence. Physical grounding techniques include activities that reaffirm connection with the body and the earth, eating nourishing food, walking barefoot on natural ground, engaging in physical exercise or manual labor, or simply paying mindful attention to sensory experience. These practices help re-establish the proper relationship between consciousness and its physical vehicle after periods of separation. Intellectual integration involves making sense of astral experiences within one's broader understanding of reality, neither dismissing them as merely subjective, nor accepting them uncritically as absolute truth. This often requires holding paradox and ambiguity, allowing these experiences to expand rather than replace one's existing frameworks of understanding. Spiritual integration places astral experiences within the context of one's broader spiritual path and purpose. Rather than becoming ends in themselves, these experiences ideally serve the development of qualities like wisdom, compassion, and presence that manifest in all dimensions of existence, including ordinary physical life. The astral plane, like all frontiers, contains both wonders and perils, territories of extraordinary beauty and significance, alongside shadowed regions where the unprepared traveler may encounter challenges beyond their capacity to integrate. Neither uncritical enthusiasm nor fearful avoidance serves us in approaching these realms, but rather a balanced perspective that acknowledges both the remarkable potential and the genuine challenges of consciousness exploring beyond its ordinary boundaries. As we conclude our journey through the shadow archive of astral projection, we return to the fundamental questions that have driven human exploration of these experiences throughout history. What do these extraordinary states reveal about the nature of consciousness itself? What might they suggest about the relationship between mind and matter, between individual awareness and the broader fabric of reality? And how might the integration of these experiences transform not only our understanding, but our very way of being in the world? We have journeyed through the shadow archive of astral projection, a collection of experiences reported across cultures and time, suggesting consciousness may not be as tied to the physical body as we once thought. From ancient Egyptian beliefs to modern scientific investigations, we've examined this profound aspect of human experience. What are we to make of these accounts? Science, committed to evidence, approaches such claims cautiously. Yet, as our understanding of consciousness evolves, we recognize the limitations of materialist models in explaining human experience. Perhaps we are at a threshold where objective science and subjective consciousness can inform one another. Humans have always sought to transcend boundaries, not only through astral projection, but through art, science, and spiritual practice. These extraordinary states of consciousness invite us to confront fundamental questions about mind, matter, and the nature of the self. The astral plane, whether an objective realm or an exploration of the psyche, offers profound insights into consciousness. Ultimately, the value of astral projection lies not in definitive answers, but in the ongoing quest to understand consciousness and reality. Its mystery urges us to keep questioning, exploring, and expanding the boundaries of our perception.